Hey everyone, it's Dylan with SeaTee Aquatics, and today we're talking about nitrates. In our previous videos, we talked about alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium, and how they are the backbone for the coral skeleton structure, and how calcium and alkalinity form together to make calcium carbonate within the animals in our tanks, and magnesium being the limiting factor, making sure that it doesn't bond in the water, but only once it is inside the organism. Nitrates, on the other hand, along with phosphates, are also important, as the coral will use these to help build its zooxanthellae algae within inside of it. The zooxanthellae algae is what gives coral its beautiful color. Previously in this series, we talked about the nitrogen cycle, and how any food that you add into your tank breaks down into ammonia, which then further gets processed into nitrite, and finally into nitrate. We learned how you can do water changes to help remove some of this nitrate. But what exactly does nitrate do to our systems, and how is it beneficial or detrimental? So compared to ammonia or nitrate, nitrate is not nearly as toxic to the inhabitants in our fish tank. Any amount of ammonia or nitrite can cause some serious issues to the inhabitants in our tank, where nitrate can usually be tolerated in amounts up to 30 parts per million. If your nitrate levels do happen to go beyond 30 parts per million, not only will you start to experience a lot of nuisance algae growth, but the inhabitants of your tank will also start to become stressed out, as at this point, it does start to become toxic to them. Not just the fish, but coral and invertebrates as well. Personally, I like to leave my nitrates between 5 and 10 parts per million, as I find that this number is somewhat easy to maintain with regular water changes. Having high levels of nitrate in your system can be both good and bad. Nitrate is a food source for most plant material, and what this means is that it's going to help plants grow. In the reef tank, this is both good and bad. It is good because coral actually have algae within them. We're going to talk about this more in a later video, but coral form a symbiotic relationship. They have the polyps, which are the animal, and then they also have an algae in them called zooxanthellae. This is a photosynthetic organism, and because it is an algae, it does use nitrate to help it grow, making it essential for coral life. Now, nitrates is not the only way to get nitrogen, so even if your nitrate is 0, doesn't necessarily mean that your coral is going to die or stop growing, although this is usually the number one source, and therefore it is important to try and keep that level above 0. But on the other end, having too high nitrates can cause algae, which is also a plant, to blow up in your system. Having high nitrate levels tends to go hand in hand with having a lot of algae in the system. But there is one other limiting factor that we will talk about later on in this series. I like to keep my nitrates between 5 and 10 parts per million. The reason for this is it keeps the nitrates low enough that algae doesn't tend to blow up too much, but it also keeps enough nitrates in the system for the coral to color up. That being said, I have seen many people have successful reef tanks with nitrates as high as 30 parts per million, and they are not necessarily battling algae. It all depends on your tank. Beyond your basic water changes, if your nitrate levels do get high, there are many other techniques that you can employ to help you lower the nitrates in your system. The first and best option, in my opinion, is to reduce feeding. Typically, nitrates get high because of a lot of food in the tank. As we talked about previously, nitrate is the product of the nitrogen cycle. Therefore, nitrates almost always starts off as food going into the tank. By reducing feeding and increasing water changes, you should be able to tackle the problem relatively quickly. Beyond this, having a properly installed and tuned protein skimmer can also help to reduce nitrates in the tank. Another great natural solution to helping reduce nitrates in a tank is adding some sort of macroalgae or adding a turf scrubber. Both of these options, being plant matter in the tank with lots of light added, will help to fuel the growth of these algae rather than the algae in your tank by reducing the nitrates, as they will absorb it through the photosynthetic process. There are also some synthetic products, chemicals, and absorbents that can be added to the tank to help reduce nitrates. Something like ChemiPure or Purigen are examples of chemical options or absorbents that can be added to the tank to help reduce nitrates. And what if the nitrates happen to be too low, or you want to elevate them? Well, we would just do the opposite. One, you can reduce water changes, increase feeding, or there are products such as from Nios or Brightwell, where you can dose nitrates directly to the tank so that your coral can absorb it for increased coloration. So how do we measure nitrate in the system? There are many great test kits out there for measuring nitrate. Some simple ones that I have used in the past are something like API, which, although not the most accurate, can give you a good general range for nitrate. These test kits I recommend more for beginners, as they are good when setting up the tank to help you see ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate in the system, and to give you a ballpark range of where each is at. As your tank becomes more established and you start to add coral, I would definitely recommend getting something more accurate, such as something from Saltwater, or my favorite test kit is this digital one from Hanna. The digital reader from Hanna that I like is the High Range Nitrate Test Kit. And I like this one because it's very simple to use. All you have to do is take a sample of water from your tank and mix in a packet of reagent. The worst part about this test is that it takes about 10 minutes to do, as you have to wait 7 minutes after mixing before the results can be read by the reader. But as long as you're patient, this test is super easy to do and usually gives you super accurate results. I have a video about this tester that you can check out here. As mentioned, having high levels of nitrate in your system can cause lots of different types of algae to start growing or fuel current algae growth. So there you go. Today, we've talked about nitrate and how it affects coral and algae in our system. Hope you enjoyed what you saw, and remember, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications to join us on our journey through the sea, or drop a comment below and let us know what you thought of the video. Thanks for watching.